All right, here we go. This video is for Monday, March 16th. We are doing lesson 93. Your homework tonight is the practice set and multiples of 3. Just a heads up, I'll be posting the answers to the homeworks from the previous night the following day. So I'll just scan those in, kind of like we do in class, where you'll see all the work and answers. I'll scan it in, post it on Blackboard, so you guys will be grading your own and responsible for grading your own. A reminder as well, when we return, you're going to turn in a portfolio of all the homeworks you had while we were out. And then also upon return, we'll have a test on the material that we covered while we were gone. And so kind of figuring out how that will work in terms of how it will be graded, but you're going to have half of it will be your portfolio, making sure you have all the homeworks and that they're graded, and then half will be the test. Okay, so I'm thinking maybe either 50% of a test, the portfolio, 50% the test, or 2 tests. A test for the portfolio, test grade for the portfolio, test grade for the test. So again, just make sure that you have all the homeworks, that they're completed and graded. I'm not so worried about the grades as I am that they are completed and graded. I'll also be doing some, I think I'm gonna try experimenting with YouTube Live to answer any questions. So be on the lookout for those, or an announcement I'll try to post on Blackboard about when I'll be on YouTube Live to answer any questions that you may have from any of the lessons we've covered. All right, so just a heads up on that. Again, all of this is kind of new, so bear with me as we go. Today though, we're doing lesson 93, equations with exponents, and really just focusing on quadratic equations. And we've seen some of these problems and done a couple. They've shown up on our homework. You guys have asked about them. We've gone through them, so you may recognize these. Usually you guys kind of stumbled upon the fact that there are going to be 2 answers with these equations, and you'll see that in a second. So first, let's start by defining what a quadratic equation is. So a quadratic equation is simply an equation with a variable with an exponent of 2. All right, so nothing higher. The highest exponent in the equation is a 2. All right, so an example. So let's do our first example. All right, go red. An example of a quadratic equation, okay, would be x squared equals 25. All right, and so we're just going to solve for x here. All right. So we're going to be using Mr. Kubik's rules for algebra while we do these. The same rules apply. The only thing that changes is the fact that there's this 2 as an exponent. All right, and so let's go ahead. Right, so if I want to solve for x, okay, so solve for x. All right. I'm going to apply a math trick for morons. All right, so our math trick for morons, I'm trying to get x by itself. So what's happening to x? It's being squared. How do I undo squaring? Well, I'm going to take the square root of x squared. Okay, so there's your math trick for morons. I'm going to apply the balance rule. So I have to do that to both sides. So I'm going to take the square root of 25 as well. Okay, so now we simplify. The square root of 25 is 5. And the square root of x squared. So this is the tricky part, new for us a little bit, all right? The square root of x squared no longer is just x. Instead, it's the absolute value of x, okay? So from here, right, I am going to what Mr. Kubik likes to call bifurcate, all right? So we are bifurcating, and that just means split into 2. All right, And so I'm going to solve this two ways. Solve as is. All right, sorry, my handwriting. So I'm going to just say, let's just pretend that those absolute value bars aren't there. And I'm going to say x equals 5. That's it. That's one answer. All right, so we're solving as is. Just pretend that the absolute value bars aren't there. One of your answers is that x equals 5. The other is I'm going to solve by flipping or change the sign. All right, so I'm going to say that this is really equal to x equals, and I'll change the sign of my right side, -5. So now my answer to this problem is x equals plus or minus 5. Okay, and I can check this, right? If I want to check this, I'm just going to substitute. So let's substitute back in with our answers here. So we can check by substituting. All right, so let's first take our first answer, +5, and plug it in. So I'm going to substitute +5 in for x and see if this is true. So is +5 squared equal to 25? That is true. So that works. And then I'm going to substitute -5. Again, I'm going to put this in parentheses to help show. So -5 goes in for the x. -5 squared, does that equal 25? And yeah, -5 times -5, negative times a negative is a positive. So that is true. All right, so there's your answer for our first example, x squared equals 25. Okay, let's do another one. Let's get a little bit trickier here. So I'm going to go to my next slide. All right, and let's go green, and we're going to go with our second example. So example, here we go. Let's take 2x squared plus 8 equals 80. All right, so again, I am doing everything the same as if we were solving these two-step equations previously. So again, Mr. Kubik's rules for algebra, right, we have to keep in mind. So the first one is the MTFM, so the math trick for morons, right? So states, right, to undo addition, we subtract. To undo subtraction, we add. To undo division, we multiply. To undo multiplication, we divide. All right, number 2 is once we identify our math trick for morons, we need to apply the balance rule. So if I undo something, I need to make sure I do it to both sides. Number 3 is SADMAP. We are going to use SADMAP to help us identify which math trick for morons we should do first. SADMAP is just PEMDAS in reverse. 4, we have Franck's rule. All right, and that is if I want to move a variable from one side to the other, I need to add or subtract, right? So if I'm solving for x squared, I don't undo x squared by dividing by x, because that's going to get x on both sides. So let's just keep those in mind as we go through this one. So 2x squared plus 8 equals 80. I need to get x by itself, so I ask myself, what's happening to x and how do I undo it? So there's 3 things happening to x. If I went in order of PEMDAS, it's being squared, it's then being multiplied by 2, and I'm then adding 8 to it. So I'm going to undo all of that using SADMAP and go in reverse order. So I'm going to apply my math trick for morons. I'm going to start with adding 8. So I undo adding 8 by subtracting 8. So there's a math trick for morons. I have to apply the balance rule, do it to both sides. So then my next line would be 2x squared, these cancel, equals 72. Now what's happening to x? Multiplied by 2, n being squared. I'm going to use SADMAP and undo the multiplication before the exponent by dividing by 2. MTFM, balance rule. So my next line would be x squared equals 36. How do I undo squaring something? I need to take the square root. So there is another MTFM and my balance rule. So remember, the square root of x squared is no longer just x now. It's the absolute value of x. So this 2 tells me that there's going to be 2 answers. The absolute value of x equals the square root of 36, which is 6. Okay, bifurcate. Mr. Cubic loves this word. If you can remember this for next year, you're going to be in good shape. So I'm going to split this into 2 possible solutions. The first is I'm solving as is. So I'm just going to pretend that the absolute value bars are not there and say x simply equals 6. Second way is I'm going to flip the sign and say that x equals not positive 6, but negative 6. So my answer becomes these 2 are both solutions. So I can say x equals plus or minus 6. Again, I can check this by substituting both positive 6 and negative 6 in for x and seeing if I come up with 80. For sake of time on this video, I'm going to leave that up to you. All right, let's try another. So let's go with 3x squared equals 36. Change color, we'll go purple. So example, 3x squared equals 36. Okay, so I'm gonna pause it here. Well, not pause, if you want, take some time, pause the video at home, see if you can figure this one out before you move on, all right? But again, here we go. I'm gonna figure out what I need to do to get x by itself. So the first thing is I'm gonna divide both sides by 3 because x is being squared and multiplied by 3. So I need to get rid of that multiply by 3 by dividing. I do it to both sides. My 3's on this side cancel and I get x squared equals 12. Okay. Undo the squaring by taking the square root. Do it to both sides so that you have your balance rule, and I get the absolute value of x equals the square root of 12. So here's another added twist to some of these problems. You're not always going to get a perfect square on this side. That's okay. We know how to deal with that. Everything else still applies. So I'm going to bifurcate, solve as is. I get x equals root 12, and I'm going to flip the sign on the other side. X equals negative root 12. Now I'm not done because I need to make sure I can not simplify further. So I can, because root 12, right, I can simplify into 2 and 6, 2 and 3, and so x equals 2 root 3 on this side. All right, so since I've already figured out that root 12 equals 2 root 3, I'm gonna say x equals, this side is just negative 2 root 3. All right, so those are your 2 answers for this problem. Again, I can write that as x equals plus or minus, sorry, erase. Cool. X equals plus or minus 2 root 3. All right? Yes. All right. We'll do one more example. This time we'll have a proportion. Let's change color here. This is our last one. Again, see if you can pause the video, solve it before continuing. So we have x over 8 equals 2 over x. So I have two fractions with an equal sign in between them, so I know that I can cross multiply to solve here. So I'm going to go ahead, circle, get x times x, which is x squared, equals 8 times 2. So I get x squared equals 16. And from here, everything that we've been doing previously. To undo the square root of, to undo x squared, I'm going to take the square root, do it to both sides, and I get the absolute value of x equals 4. From here, we split, solve as is, x equals 4. Solve where we flip the sign, x equals -4. So my answer, x equals plus or minus 4. And let's go ahead and check this one. All right, so I can check by plugging my answers in for x. So let's say I want to do positive 4. So that would be 4 over 8 equals 2 over 4. And I know that that's true. Both of those fractions are equal to 1/2. So that works. How about -4 over 8 equals 2 over -4. Again, now both of those fractions are equal to -1/2, so that works as well. All right. So that is the end of the lesson. Again, your homework is the practice set and multiples of 3. That is due on Tuesday, March 17th. I'll post the answers on that day. Again, please try to get in a good habit of doing these homeworks each day, not falling behind, trying to do them all in one day, because again, it'll just be too much probably for you to handle. So again, keep an eye out for the YouTube Live. I'll try to post an announcement about when I'll be doing that to answer any questions. Feel free also to comment on the YouTube video or email me to get in touch with me about anything any concerns or questions you might have. All right, fellas, good luck.